I don't want to see your family at the wedding." Tiffany's voice was as cold as glass as she stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding the printed guest list. Her words cut straight into the life I had thought was calm, dragging the wedding, 8 weeks away, into the opening battle of a war. She pointed at the list, her eyes full of icy intent. "Cross them all out now. Prove that you choose me, not them." I looked down at the names of my parents, my sister, and relatives. My hand trembled slightly as I held the pen. She assumed I would just cross out my own family, but she didn't know that I could follow her logic to be fair. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my tone steady. "You mean, my parents and family can't come at all?" "Yes." Tiffany's lips curved into a cold smile. "They always question me, criticize our plans. I don't like anyone questioning me. I want a wedding that belongs only to us." I looked at the familiar names on the list. My hand quivered slightly over the pen. Her demand, to completely exclude my family, brought back flashes of years of being ignored and humiliated. When I was a child, my parents were always busy with work, and weekend family meals were often cold frozen pizza or leftovers. At school, my clothes were mocked as secondhand, and my math scores were always at the bottom of the class. The most humiliating moment was in middle school during a dance performance. I stepped on a classmate's foot due to nervousness and was scolded publicly by the teacher for being entirely unworthy of being on stage. In college, my roommates thought I wasn't social enough and never invited me to parties. My internship mentor publicly criticized my proposals as chaotic in front of the entire class. Every humiliation carved an invisible mark onto me, teaching me to hide and observe. These experiences taught me one thing: when others mock or belittle you, it only proves you haven't taken control. But the one in control leaves no room for rebuttal. Back in the kitchen, I slowly began crossing off names, not only my parents, but also Tiffany's family members who had voiced objections to the wedding plan. I kept my voice calm. "Tiffany, you said anyone who criticizes the wedding cannot come, right?" She froze, mouth slightly open. I only said my family." I paused, then handed her the list. "You said, anyone who criticizes our wedding cannot come. I am merely enforcing it strictly." The phone soon rang. I picked up the landline and called my mother. "Mom, I'm sorry, but you can't attend the wedding." My mother was taken aback, her voice full of confusion and hurt. "Why? You've spent so much money, how could?" I didn't interrupt, keeping my tone calm. "You criticized our plan. You don't support the wedding." Silence on the other end, then the line went dead. Next, I called my sister and my aunt and uncle. Their voices carried surprise and anger, but I ended each call calmly. Tiffany stared at me, eyes widening. You can't also, you're. Anyone who criticizes cannot come," I repeated her own words. Soon, even Tiffany's parents and siblings were removed from the invitation according to the same logic. Her mother's voice trembled over the phone. This is unfair. You criticized the wedding. You don't support it," I said coldly, and hung up. She covered her mouth, sitting on the floor, tears streaming down her face. Are you crazy?" I walked to her, voice still calm. "You set the rule. I just enforced it." The next 3 days, the wedding fell into chaos, for bridesmaids quit, Tiffany's parents tried to cancel the catering, and the photographer called to confirm if the wedding was even happening. The guest count plummeted from 150 to 70. Tiffany clutched her head, every phone call turning her face paler. I began to realize that the illusion of control she had always held was collapsing. She tried to rally the remaining guests, but everyone hesitated after being removed from the list. Her voice went from crying to pleading, "Call your family back. We can talk this out." I picked up my coffee cup and answered calmly, "No one can break the rules and then demand fairness. I will not fix the consequences of the rules you set." Her hands shook, gripping her phone tightly. Every attempt to dial ended in failure. Her parents had blocked her number, her siblings no longer answered. For the first time, she felt powerless. I looked at her pale face, my voice low, "Tiffany, you need to understand, when you use control and intimidation as leverage, the only control left is emptiness." She collapsed onto the kitchen floor, staring at the tiles, lips trembling. "No, it's not possible, we're married." I shook my head gently, placing the list on the table. Marriage isn't about proving who controls whom. The rulemaker must bear the consequences of the rules. 3 days later, I received a call from the venue. Catering was partially cancelled, the photography package needed to be rearranged, and the staff were bewildered by all the guest changes. Tiffany and I sat in the living room, she still hugged her knees, tears mixing with helpless anger. I stood and handed her backpack. "I've cancelled the wedding. You can call your family and deal with the rest yourself. I'm done with your control and coldness." She froze, voice low and shaking. You can't do this." "I can," I said firmly, my eyes steady and clear. She sobbed on the floor, her body shaking as if it would collapse entirely. How will you face them? What about me?" I didn't answer. Only our sobs filled the room. The past humiliation, control, and oppression all reflected back. She was powerless, and I stood above the rules and logic, unshaken. In the end, the wedding was cancelled. The guest list was empty. Tiffany stood alone in the kitchen, her gaze vacant. I packed my things and closed the door, leaving her to face the consequences she had ignored. The room was so quiet you could almost hear her own heart trembling. This time, no one could help her, and no rule could save her. Past oppression, humiliation, and control were all answered in this moment. She was helpless, and I finally held the upper hand.